Hey everyone, so we're back with Smoldering Hunger, Chapter 5. Uh, I made a bit of a decision after the last chapter. I've decided that when we come across another chapter that's so info dump, dialogue heavy, I'm going to read the juicy parts to you guys, but I'm just kind of going to summarize the rest of it because honestly, instead of reading the entire thing, I could have just read the fun parts and then just told you they threatened and male postured, and that's the end of that chapter. Nothing of value was added, at least for us anyway. We're not really invested in these characters. But I'm going to read chapter 5. It's a short chapter, and it's interesting. It's interesting to say the least. So here we go. Chapter 5 of Smoldering Hunger. Pompeii, Italy. Baladin stared at the ruins of Pompeii, remembering how he tracked Rhee there. He searched all over the realm for her. Every time he got close, she slipped away. He felt her just as she had felt him. He still wasn't sure why she stopped running from him, but he was glad when she did. From the time she was a young hellion of a light fae, she'd run rampant over everyone and everything. It wasn't just fae who were drawn to her, it was everyone and everything. We get it. Plants, animals, wind, water, and even the sun. How? How? She was a force to be reckoned with, and she wasn't even aware of it. Of course, it's like when a woman's beautiful and she doesn't know it. Though all fae were naturally beautiful, Rhee had an inner glow that no other fae possessed, not even Usail, the Light Queen. It was his friendship with Rhee's brother, Wolmir, that afforded Baladin the privilege to know her. For centuries he'd loved her from afar, waiting until she was old enough to want a husband. How much older than her is he? Because that's not okay. Instead of following in the footsteps of most female light, Bray followed him and Wolmir. She trained with them, fought with them, earned herself a position as the only female in the Queen's Guard. Well, that's not very progressive. It was one of the highest honors a life fae could ever achieve. It was truly a day of celebration. For Baladin, it was doubly so because he was able to spend more time with Rhee. However, while he was eating meals with her, training beside her, and dreaming of her at night, Rhee was falling in love with the Dragon King. Oh, he's a nice guy. I'm not going to use the word friend zone because that shit does not exist. Maybe he should have told her how he felt and got an answer. We should try that sometimes, you guys. Baladin still remembered the sensation of a dagger slicing him open when she told him all about the Dragon King she'd met. It was all Baladin could do not to tell her how he felt. Caution stopped him, urging him to give her time, because surely whatever was going on with the king would never last. Well, that's kind of fucked up. As if fate conspired against him, the affair went on much longer than he ever thought possible, and just when he was ready to give up, the king abruptly ended the affair. The next thing Baladin knew, he was holding Rhee as she cried unending tears, her anguish tearing him apart. Baladin went from hating the Dragon King to wanting to cut him to tiny pieces for breaking Rhee's heart. For days he remained by Rhee's side, comforting her as best as he could, even when all she did was cry. It was enough that she turned to him. It meant she knew he'd always be there for her. Yeah, because you're her fucking friend, weirdo. I should really stop cursing in these videos. But she turned to you because you're her friend. Ah. Then Usil summoned him. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine Rhee would venture into the darkest side of the Fey realm where no light realm fared to go. But Baladin had been ready to follow her. Only he saw Rhee's Dragon King go in there first. To this day, Rhee had no idea who brought her out of that death trap. Baladin dropped his chin to his chest as those memories assaulted him. He'd sworn to stay beside her always, so he was prepared to wait for her to get past her broken heart, except the Fey army was called to war. As the Queen's Guard, they'd led the charge. He touched his left shoulder where he'd been hit with an arrow from a dart. The tip came so close to piercing his heart, he was still surprised he hadn't died. In some ways, it would have been better if it had killed him instead of him ending up in a dark Fey dungeon where he was consequently turned. All the love he once held for Rhee was then twisted to hate. He made it his mission to capture and turn her. When she ventured into Tarith's domain, Baladin had scarcely believed his fortune. Just for a second he believed she was there for him, to try and bring him back to the light. Maybe you should try to do that for yourself. You shouldn't rely on other people to help you be a better person. Then he learned of the Dragon King, Kellen, who was being held. Despite all of that Rhee's lover had done to her, she was still helping the Dragon Kings. It infuriated him, exasperated him, and he'd been determined to do something about it. Baladin got his justice. He caught Rhee, and then he tortured her. Well, that's not a good way to show your love. That's, not okay. The Dark King, Tarath, had been ecstatic, believing he would have 2 former Queen's Guards with him. Except Baladin pushed Ree too hard too quickly. She destroyed his fortress and in the process showed him the sheer amount of power within her. Being near her once more also revealed something else. He still loved her, deeply. Baladin proceeded to chase her all around the world, not to turn her dark, but to be near her. His heart had leapt when he found her at Pompeii and she placed her hand in his. He hadn't known what to do after that. Ree was no longer running, but she still wasn't his. Baladin knew then he would have to treat slowly with her. Their first kiss had rocked him to the pit of his black soul. Oh my god, you guys. The more he was with Ree, even for mere seconds, the more he felt himself changing. She consumed his thoughts day and nights, asleep or awake. He'd waited thousands of years for her. He didn't want to wait any longer. That's a really long time, buddy. That's a really fucking long time. Then she'd come to him, asking for help. She touched him, kissed him. Whether she wanted to admit it or not, she felt something between them. There was no denying it, not the way she returned his kiss. In order for them to be together, Baladin had to figure out how they could escape both Lucille and Tarath, or take them both down. He watched Ree in action recently as she, along with Khan and Thorn, attacked Mikhail's manor to save a human. All was going well until Ree had been struck with dark magic. Reliving that moment still made him feel powerless and so damn angry. Baladin rubbed his chest where his heart should be and teleported to the desert. It was the place they shared their first kiss, the place they returned to time and again. So is he like the undead? He sat in the hot sun, letting the tiny grains burn his hands as he buried them. The sun baked him, but he didn't feel any of it. He kept seeing Ree being thrown back by the blast of magic at the manor and then lying unmoving. Baladin attempted to go to her, but Ulrich stopped him. It was Constantine who took Ree to Drigan. All Baladin could hope for was that the King of Kings used his power to heal her. It was not knowing how Ree fared that was slowly killing Baladin. He hadn't heard from or seen Ree in weeks. Each day that went by without a word from her was his own special kind of torture. He called her repeatedly. She either didn't answer because she couldn't or she didn't want to. With Ree, it could be either option. Leave her alone, man. Ree was loyal to a fault. She had a good heart that he soured during his torture of her. She was amazing with a sword and someone you knew you could trust explicitly. She wasn't without her faults. She loved to meddle because, she's a woman. And had a penchant for shopping daily because, again, she's a woman. Her fingernail polish collection was unrivaled, as was her affinity for having her nails painted. Because, she's a woman. The fact that she couldn't lie without feeling extreme pain was a boon for anyone close to her. Ree always told the truth, no matter how painful it might be. There was no lies or deception with her, just honesty and laughter. Considering it hurts her to lie, The laughter had been missing from her eyes ever since she'd broken free from the chains of Mordere while in his dungeon. He'd done that to her. He nearly snuffed out her light. How could he have done that if he'd loved her? He loved the Ree that ran laughing through the fields of flowers with her black hair loose and her arms out. Now she sounds like she's 5. He loved the Ree whose silvery eyes shone with mischief whenever she played a prank. Definitely sounds like she's 5. He loved the Ree who would bounce up and down with excitement anytime she had a surprise for someone. He loved the Ree who would close her eyes and lift her face to the sun as if seeking its warmth. All that had drawn him to Ree, and he'd crushed it. It was the darkness within her that allowed him to find her. It was that which called to him. He hated her for what he had begun, yet he was responsible for turning her in the same direction. That is, if she lived. Well, fuck. She's not the one who did this to you? Baladin dropped his head to his hands, a tight band gripping his chest. Life without her would be impossible. He couldn't be here without her. She was everything, his reason for breathing. Please, Ree, come to me, Baladin whispered. I need you. I love you. He looked up, hoping she would suddenly appear, looking at him as if he were pathetic. Because you are fucking pathetic. Instead, there was only the sound of the wind, which met his ears. The Drigan Distillery. Ree stood in the doorway, gazing at the bed where Reese, was staring at Ree, who lay in the bed as unmoving as for the past 2 weeks. He visited every day, and each time he fully expected her to be sitting up demanding Khan bring her a tray of food. Still no change? Khan asked as he came to stand beside him. Reese glanced at the King of Kings and shook his head. Khan's black gaze was trained on Ree. None. I don't understand, Khan said as he walked to the bed and put his hand on Ree's forehead. I healed her, all of her injury. She should have woken by now. I know. Ree shoved away from the door, moving to the chair near the bed. He sat heavily and sighed. Something's wrong. Khan straightened with a nod. I agree. But what? The dark magic? Khan shrugged his shoulders, his white dress shirt stretching over his arms at the movement. He slid his hands into his pocket. She'd been through a lot lately. We don't know what happened to her at Baladin's hands. She's not a dark, Reese said through clenched teeth. I never said she was. You implied that she might be. Khan glanced away. All I'm saying is that we don't have all the facts. We know she was tortured. I saw her, Reese. I didn't recognize her when I walked into that dungeon. Whatever Baladin did, he did well. It was weeks after Ulrich carried her out of Baladin's fortress before we saw her, Reese admitted. And she's not been the same. Her light is diminished. She's gone, but different. Not gone, but she's different. Reese shook his head sadly. Even I can admit you're right in that assessment. I fear the dark magic is somehow going to eviscerate whatever is left of her light. Reese is too strong for that. Reese, God, I hope they're not together. Can you imagine Ree and Reese? Reese eyed Khan. How she'd love to hear you say that. It's because she's asleep that I am, Khan replied with a slight smile. The smile died as he shifted his gaze back to her. But it's worrying that she's not woken. I don't know what else to do. Lucille wants her at the castle. No, Reese stated as he rose. Ree isn't leaving Drigan. Khan's forehead puckered for a moment. She's a light fae. She should be with her own kind, not here with us dragon kings. This is exactly where she needs to be. With friends. She left the Queen's Guard. Ree wouldn't want to return to there. Khan gave a nod of his head. I'll only be able to keep Lucille away for so long. You're king of kings. You can keep her away indefinitely. Reese suspected something was going on between Khan and Lucille, and the more he spoke with Khan about the Queen, the more he thought he was right. I can, but I don't want to. Since when do you bow to the Fae? A muscle jumped in Khan's jaw. Never. But you are to Lucille. There's a lot of talk about you two having an affair. Is that true? Since when do you listen to rumors? Since it involves Lucille. Answer the question, Reese pressed. Khan held his gaze for long moments. I didn't ask you who you took to your bed. I'd like the same courtesy whether it's a fae or a human. It's my business. Reese watched Khan walk from the room knowing he had an answer. Now all Reese could pray for was that Ree never discovered the truth. And that is the end of chapter 5. Yeah, guys, don't be friend-zoned for like thousands of years. Guys and girls, because girls can be friend-zoned too, like the phenomenon exists. But yes, so that's chapter 5. We will be back with more.